Today we'll be talking about our recipe and meal planning app from Group 8, which includes James, myself, Raya, and Dylan. So an overview of what we'll be going over is our user, design, testing, and demo. For user, we'll be talking about problem, general requirements, inputs and outputs. For design, we'll be discussing our UML class diagram, pseudocode, and design choices and features. For testing, we'll be talking a little bit about our testing process and the data used. And then for demo, we're just going to give a demo of our recipe and meal planning app. So starting with the user, we'll focus on our problem statement first, which states, this project aims to streamline and integrate a healthy and well-planned meal structure into our daily routines. Say goodbye to the hassle of deciding when and what to eat. Some general requirements include a recipe database. This database will be searchable with ingredients, instructions, nutrition information, and images. Secondly, a grocery list. The grocery list will support both manual item entry and recipe-based item generation. This means that you can navigate to a recipe, go over to the ingredients list, and you can add each item individually from the ingredients list, or you can add all to shopping cart. That way, you don't have to input every item individually. Then we have our saved recipes. This is a page where you can view the recipes that you've saved from searching over on our recipes page. This allows users to not have to scroll through an entire data set of recipes to find the favorite one that they want to add to their meal plan. And lastly, our meal plan. This is a page to organize daily meals by date, mealtime, and recipe. So you can pick your date, you can pick breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and then you can select which recipe to add to those fields. Second, design. So we'll be going over our UML class diagram, pseudocode, and some design choices and features along with some code snippets. So for our UML class diagram, centered is our recipe, and this has about 3 layers to it. So for recipe itself, there are many attributes, including an ID, title, ingredients, instructions, total time, URL, photo URL, calories, protein, fat, and carbs. Now those last 4 actually rely on the dependency to the right, which is scraper. This scraper takes the URL as a string and then fetches the nutritional data off of it, which we'll discuss a little bit later. Okay, and then we have our user. So the user has certain attributes such as their favorite recipes and meal plans, which are designated solely to the user, and then a couple methods, including save recipe, unsave recipe, add and delete to meal plan, search for recipes, add to grocery list, and remove from grocery list. And our database actually holds those recipes and meal plans, and you can load recipe or save recipe based on that. The meal plan includes its name, date, recipes, mealtime, and total calories. And then for the meal plan methods, you can add recipe and remove recipe. The grocery list, lastly, is an items, which is a string. And then you can add an item, remove item, or generate from recipe, which is what we were discussing earlier. Here's our pseudocode. So for the class grocery list, we'll have properties, which is an items, a list of strings, and those methods that we discussed in the UML class diagram. Then class recipe, which has title, total time, description, calories, ingredients, instructions, and then this one in specific is favorite, which is a Boolean value. And if it is favorite, it'll be in our favorited list. Okay, then we have some methods, which is add to favorite or remove from favorite. Then we have the meal plan class, which includes a dictionary, so each day is associated with this meal time and recipe. And methods include add recipe, remove recipe, get recipe. And then we have the recipe app, which basically sums up all of those features we just saw. And some properties of this include recipes, grocery list, meal plan, and saved recipes. So methods for that are searching recipes, adding a recipe to the grocery list, adding recipe to saved, removing recipe from saved, viewing a recipe ingredients, and viewing recipe instructions, which are the 3 tabs of our recipe page.
Okay, so meal plan page. We have 4 main sections, a custom date selector, a list of recipes for the meal plan for the chosen date, a quick view of the calorie count per recipe, and a button to add individual recipes to the meal plan. Alright, so the floating action button allows the user to add a recipe to the meal plan as a breakfast, lunch, or dinner item. So since there are only 3 items, we keep track of each item with an integer, whether the user selected breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And for the build capsule view, it's a custom widget that combines and manipulates date time to create a capsule shaped widget for each date. And each capsule is wrapped in a gesture detector, so we can select or detect when the user selects a date and utilize that information to display the correct meal plan for the day. And the build week view uses the capsule widget from earlier to build a horizontal scrollable view to allow the user to scroll through future dates and add a meal plan to. And here we have the build tiles. It's a simple list view widget that displays the recipe for each of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It fetches from the local database based on the selected date and populates each list tile appropriately. And it's also wrapped in a gesture detector, so the user can go straight to the recipe by tapping on it. And here we have the recipes page. We got 4 main components. We have a search bar for a quick lookup of a recipe. And we have an images view for an easy preview. A bookmark icon for quickly adding recipes to a favorites list. And a grid view here that is scrollable, so the user can just scroll through and check out some new recipes. Alright, so we have the build grid item. It grabs all the recipes from the database and builds out a grid view of card widgets, which are wrapped in a gesture detector as well. So that enables the user to navigate straight to the recipes detail page by tapping on an image. And the card, it's built with a card widget, and this one uses a stack widget so that we can stack the image and the name of the recipe on top of it, as well as the bookmark icon on the top right. And here we have some decoration for the recipe name. So it's styled in a way so that it's legible. We use a white text with a slight shadow on top of a half transparent black box. And then the bookmark icon uses the traditional yellowish gold color to stand out from the image. And here we have the recipe details page. There are 3 main components of the recipe detail page. The overview tab displays an overview of the recipe, including the number of servings, the calories per serving, and total time. Below that, we have some nutritional info, such as protein, carbs, and fat. The ingredients tab lists the individual ingredients and a button on the left of each ingredient to add to the grocery page, and an add all button on the bottom. And the last tab is going to be the directions or the instructions, so the user can quickly view the instructions on how to prep the meal. Alright, so here we have the build tab bar. This is the initial tab bar for each of the tabs, the overview, ingredients, and instructions. The build overview tab, this returns a column of lists and a row at the very bottom for the nutritional info. And here we have the build ingredients row. This one again is a list of list tiles. Each of the items are wrapped in a gesture detector. So it's for the icon where the user can select it and it'll add it to the grocery list. And then finally, we have the direction row. This uses another custom widget of list tiles to display the instructions in order.
So here's our grocery list page. Now, you can see on the left we have our checkboxes, and this allows users to toggle between completed and incomplete grocery items so that while you're shopping, you can check them off. When you've checked them off, the grocery or the checkbox will turn a different color to indicate further that you have completed this item. Secondly, there's a delete, which allows users to remove items from the grocery list completely, and for this we've chosen to use an icon. And lastly, an add task, which is a elevated button on the bottom right. And when you click on this, you can go ahead and type in your grocery item, and once you hit enter, it will format it on this list under the other items. So here's the grocery list page code, or some code snippets related to the design of the page. So here you can see we're using Google Fonts, and we're using the font Inter and a soft black for less visual strain. This is consistent throughout the entire app. And over here, for what we were talking about with the checkbox, you can see the active color is different from the check color, and once you've clicked on the item or on changed, it will toggle to complete and the active color will change. And then we have the floating action button on the bottom right with a plus icon, and this allows you to add items.
A little bit about our favorites page. So when the user is in the favorites page, they can see all the recipes that they have favorited. If the user is scrolling through and they cannot find a recipe that they're looking for, they could come up to our search recipes bar and search for it. Now, searching for a recipe inside of the favorites page will only search for a recipe that is currently favorited. This will not search for a recipe that is not currently favorited. For the card, this just gives an image of the recipe. It also gives a title for the recipe and a little bookmark. The bookmark icon, when it is completely yellow, that indicates that it is favorited and in our favorites page. The user could click it again, and this would unfavorite it, and it would make it not yellow anymore, removing it from the favorites page. For the title, we added a little black background, and this is just so that the user can read it a little bit more clearly. Our favorites page code, if we take a look at the widget build grid item, this builds a grid view of favorite recipes from the user. So when the user hits that bookmark icon, it will add it to the favorites and create the grid view. If we take a look at the child card, this builds a card widget containing an image and recipe name, just as we saw for.
Now we will discuss testing, the testing process, and data used. So first and foremost, the thing we had to start with was obviously our data set. So a major issue with the raw data set that we decided upon was that all the recipe URLs were all incorrect. So when you navigated to the URL, it would just give you a blank page or 404 not found. Another issue was that the dataset had no nutritional insights, such as calories, protein, etc., despite them being on the website themselves. Lastly, the dataset had approximately 225,000 entries, which is too large for our application, and when testing it, we did have to cut it down. To solve this, we implemented a Python program which uses requests, beautiful soup, and pandas libraries. And the code basically first shortens the dataset, cuts it to however large we want it. And with the corrected URLs, which it takes from taking a base URL and attaching the recipe ID and the title with slashes in between. With those corrected URLs, the program scraped the web pages to find the nutritional data. And then entries with no images were also dropped, and all nutritional values were replaced with dash dash. This is due to some of the recipes being drinks, and therefore they lack often like proteins or carbs.
For our data, we needed an initial source, preferably JSON, so we could easily manipulate data if needed. The required data we needed for each recipe was a URL, the name of the recipe, an image, a list of ingredients, a list of instructions, and a list of nutritional info. So initially we were going to use Hive, but upon reading their documentation, we were recommended to use ISAR, the successor to Hive. The advantage of using ISAR is a streamlined CRUD operations. It enabled us to focus on app logic and design over worrying about the database logic. And it had a built-in browser inspector for live database inspection. So in all, it simplified our data handling and saved time on development, all with efficient data access.
And now we'll begin a demo of our recipe and meal planning app.
When you open up our meal plan app, it will bring you to the meal plan page. And on the meal plan page, the user can see the days along with the date, and they are allowed to scroll through, select anything. So I'm going to select Tuesday the 16th. On here, you can see we have no meals planned yet. So the user could click the plus button and add breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We're going to start with breakfast. You can then see all the recipes that we have, and the user could scroll through, check them out. And say we're feeling cinnamon buns, click it, and it will then add the cinnamon buns to our breakfast. The user can continue to meal plan for the rest of the day, so for lunch or for dinner, or they could select a different date and continue to meal plan. So for Wednesday, we have nothing. We're going to click plus and add to dinner. For dinner, we're feeling something a little bit sugary, so we're going to add some cookies, and it will add it and show the calories alongside of it. When you come to our recipes page, the user can see the thousands of delicious recipes we have. They have the ability to search for recipes. So say we're in the mood for turkey. Type in turkey, and it'll bring up a recipe with turkey inside of it. When the user finds something that they like, they could click on it. So ham and cheese. It will give us the overview, such as the servings, calories per serving, total time. It will also give us a little bit of details about the protein, carbs, and fat. The user could click on directions. It will bring you step by step on how to make it, so nothing goes wrong in the kitchen. And the user could click on ingredients to see what they need. If they're missing something or they need to go to the grocery store, they could click add all to the grocery list. You go to groceries, and it will now show us all the ingredients that we need in order to make that recipe. So when we're shopping and we find 8 eggs, we're able to click the check button, and it will cross it off our list to show that we have already have it in our cart. If we don't need 1 cup of milk, we could delete it, and it will delete it off our grocery list. But say, oh, I did need the 1 cup of milk, we can click the plus button and add 1 cup of milk, add, and you can now see that 1 cup of milk is back on our grocery list. When you go back to the recipes and you really like one of them, such as the treasure cookies, you can click this little bookmark. It will fill in all the way yellow, and that's how you know it's favorited. So you come to our favorites tab, and you can see it in here. And say we don't like the treasure cookies anymore, unclick it, and it will delete it from our favorites.